Hey folks, how's it going out there? Welcome back here to a Wednesday morning. It is the Earthmaster out here about 8:48 a.m. California time. October 16th, 2024 is the date. It's raining out here in Northern California. Goodness, wasn't really expecting that, but here we are. Getting a little bit of rain. Latest activity shows some movement along the Kermadec Trench here, getting a swarm of activity down in this region with some 4s and 5s stirring up here in the last 24 hours. This has been a hot spot here recently of earthquake activity, and it's fairly shallow as well. Looks like things are starting to adjust quite a bit down here. We'll keep New Zealand in the view as well, because a lot of times when we get some activity in this area, things tend to work its way down the plate boundary. But for now, quite a bit of earthquake activity in this area. Can't rule out a larger quake potential out here as well with this type of setup. So watch the Kermadec Trench. Also, earlier this morning, some earthquake activity in Turkey. This was just after midnight, my time here, with a 6-pointer. Pretty large earthquake, shaking things up out there. Fairly shallow as well. If you guys remember, that is in a zone that had a lot of earthquake activity back in 2023. We're talking about that 7.8 right here. And then that was followed up here by another 7-pointer a short time later in the same region. Now this is just a 5.5 and above map here that I pulled up, showing you guys the amount of earthquake activity that took place here back in 2023. So far this year, we got a 5.6 up north, and it's not uncommon to see some earthquake activity out here of this size. You know, a year or so, year and a half later. Occasionally they do happen. This earthquake, the 6-pointer striking this morning, a little bit further east here of our main sequence of events that popped off here back in 2023. So, again, not uncommon to see this activity in the same region that seen these larger earthquakes here sometime back. If you've watched my videos here recently, we've been chatting about the elevated activity out here in the Mediterranean region, including Turkey area as well. It's been quite active all across the plate boundary here, and it was looking like it was leading to something bigger. We got this one earthquake here today. Could potentially still see some further activity out here across the region. One thing that's really noticeable here is the amount of aftershock activity following that 6-pointer out here. Things are still quite strained out there across the plate boundary. And again, that is just to the east of the area of interest here from last year, where we've seen the upper 7s take place. So obviously there's some concern that could follow its way further across the plate boundary and induce some further larger scale earthquake activity in that area. But a couple different hot spots for sure. Got the Turkey area, Kermadec Trench, and even Alaska area seeing a 5.3 earthquake this morning. Aleutian Trench, that's another area that's been quite active here over the last week, with a trail of earthquake activity here across the Aleutian Trench. This one, the 5.3 that struck this morning, fairly shallow up at the subduction zone interface area. And that's a region you got to watch, because we get these big-time earthquakes that can strike out here, where the locked areas take place along the subduction zone. And one area I've been watching here is still just around this area right here, where we looked at historical data here, and it's lacking some larger earthquake activity in this region. So I'm kind of keeping an eye on this area. I know we had a 5.3 this morning, but keep an eye on this area for some larger scale movement. See what's going on here for the West Coast. One earthquake up around the Vancouver Island range there, 1.9 from yesterday. Pacific Northwest, relatively quiet. Northern California, sprinkles and rain showers and cooler weather out here. Not a whole lot of earthquake activity. This region here, the Clear Lake Volcanic Field, is simply a area that utilizes the heated area below. These are hydrothermal plants out here. They create power by injecting raw sewage into the area below to create some type of steam that creates energy. It's rather fascinating in a way, somewhat, but also gross at the same time there. But hey, they're creating some green energy ideas out there. But anyway, it also includes earthquake activity, so that's why we're always seeing earthquake man-made induced earthquakes out here around these power plants. There's a number of them as well. I went down here about a year. It's actually been about 2 years now to investigate this area, and everything's secured, all guarded off, and couldn't get inside. I got invited to do a little tour, but I haven't been down there yet. Just been quite busy here with school and whatnot. But that's what's going on out there, earthquake activity from those power plants, hydrothermal plants there. Really no new activity here. Well, actually, we do have a 2.4 here in the mix along the creeping segment of the San Andreas Fault. That's still a ways north here of the Parkfield segment, which is a little bit further down south here. So we're getting a little swarm of activity on the northern section of the San Andreas Fault of the creeping segment here. And it creeps along is, the best wording I could describe here. We don't really see a whole lot of locked up areas, but we're moving today, and that's very normal for the creeping segment of the San Andreas Fault. 2.4, the latest quake in there from a swarm of activity from yesterday as well. Southern California, well, let's see what we have here. 2.5 and above, not a whole lot going on. So mainly smaller microquake activity out here, and there's really not a whole lot going on even in that department. No major swarms. It's absolutely quiet out here. Doesn't mean it's going to stay that way, but today looks like, for now, a quiet period there in Southern California. A little bit of movement here in the microquake department stretching up towards the Yellowstone area. And Yellowstone in general, let's check this out here real quick, see what we have for the latest data. Not a whole lot either going on out here across the area of Yellowstone. Really no earthquake activity that I can see. This signal right here, Maple Creek, Parker Peak picked it up as well. That is going to be the, that almost looks like that's the 5-pointer. Over here across the Aleutian Trench, potentially about 2:39 in the morning, and that's about the time that this struck here. 2:39. That's going to be about 3:39 here, different time. That's the only thing I can think of is that's that 5-pointer showing up there across the area. Even though it's a distance away from Yellowstone, a lot of times we can get a signal there from that moderate quake showing up thousands of miles away, and I believe that's what that is. It matches the time frame because there's no larger earthquake activity here in the region. 2s from yesterday and a very small microquake there from today. The rest of the area out here fairly quiet. Oklahoma, Texas, still seeing some movement out in the oil fields. That's going to be the future for those folks, and some of those quakes can get rather large as well. 1.5 out in North Carolina. If we look at the last 7 days here, let's go last 30 days. I guess we can get a little bit better picture. New Madrid zone sits over here. That's the last 30 days of activity. Fairly decent. 23 earthquakes here, various magnitudes. Nothing big for now, but this area can see a big earthquake. The last one was back in 1811, 1812. That's a lot of time that has passed here. The slip rate may not be high enough here to produce a near-term large earthquake. It's possible, but these little earthquakes here, these 2s and 1s, just letting us know that this fault system is very much alive, and no doubt will produce a big one here one day. Upper 7s. That's some serious stuff out there for sure. But over the last 7 days or so, getting some movement out across the Carolina area. The most recent one's going to be this 1.5 north here of the swarming area. So in general, we got some strain building up out here across the area. And last 30 days, a handful of earthquakes here across the Appalachian Mountains. Even some up in the New Jersey area. Just a sign of some strain out here across the area. North American plate here is obviously always underneath the strain, and these waves, these little cycles of elevated seismicity come in wave patterns out here. A lot of times it seems to start here across the west coast and work its way at the southern end here of the North American craton, which sits right up here and works its way around this way. And it kicks up from time to time. Nothing big, but looking at this hazard map here shows us where we can see some large earthquake activity. South Carolina can get it down here, more closer to the Charleston area. That's where we've seen some larger earthquake activity in the past. There's that odd earthquake last night I was talking about, 4.6 off the plate boundary in the Pacific here. A little odd one. They finally went with a magnitude here. It took the USGS quite a while to report this earthquake, originally coming in as a 5.2, I believe. And it's just in an odd area off the plate boundary. The region here, looking at historical data, we do see a little bit of activity out here historically, but not all that common out here. It's more closer along the plate boundary and the fracture zones out here. So that's why I'm saying this is just a little weird out here to see this earthquake. I don't recall the last time I seen something like that out here in this area. So something going on. Obviously, we've noticed an increase in movement here across this area. The last 30 days shows the elevated seismicity here across the Middle America Trench. Newer activity up north here, so that's a little concerning because we could see that migrate up north into California, where it's quiet right now. But things can change. These wave patterns come up in seismicity uptick. So we'll keep an eye there on the region. Kermadec Trench here, goodness, that's just a lot of activity. Let's see what we got here for the last 30 days. That's a lot of movement here. A lot of fives there across the Kermadec Trench. I think the largest is going to be that 5.7 here, a little bit further up north. But one thing I've noticed here is this newer activity is happening in between two older events. These white circles here indicative of older activity. Newer activity right here centered in between them. So this whole area is starting to adjust. And when that takes place, I've noticed New Zealand definitely starts to jump up here in terms of earthquake activity. Over the last 30 days, we've seen a number of earthquakes here as well. 5.1 earthquake going to be the largest down here across the New Zealand area, in between the North and South Island, Cook Strait area. This earthquake was felt fairly broadly across the area, and we'll continue to watch it. Like I say, these little patterns of earthquakes out here can increase the strain and potentially trigger bigger earthquakes that are possible here across the plate boundary of New Zealand. We'll watch that. Pretty active out there. There's Turkey rocking and rolling out there in the area. Typical movement out across the Japan area, Taiwan, Philippines, Indonesia Islands area, all seen typical movement. This is something you see on any given day out here. This is pretty much the crunch zone. And I call it the crunch zone because this is where all the plates tend to collide here and subduct and pull apart and you name it. All sorts of plate boundaries out here in this area. If you look at the plate arrows, that shows exactly where the crunch zone is here. All pointing in this general fashion in that direction there. So we're always seeing 4s and 5s out there. That's the difference between the Eastern Pacific and the Western Pacific and adjacent plates here. Eastern Pacific, we don't have all that colliding and subducting. More of a transform boundary here across the west coast. Subduction zone up here, that's due to the Juan de Fuca plate here in the fracture zones that push that plate underneath this area. But it takes a little bit longer time for earthquake activity to happen out here in terms of accumulated slip rate over the years. Not so much over here. But a lot of time has passed here across the west coast in terms of our last large earthquake events out here. So we're getting awfully close there to seeing some big time movement. Should be anyway. Let's see. And there's all the activity in the Middle America Trench. Goodness, that is just quite a bit. A lot of newer activity taking place here this morning as well. A lot. That's a huge cluster of earthquake activity out there. Still rocking and rolling. And that's the area that had a 6-pointer here just a day or so ago. Going to be this earthquake just off the coast here of Costa Rica. 6.2 on the 12th. And still rocking out there. So we may see some larger activity out here as well. South America area, handful of smaller quakes, but really on any given day, this is actually common, and it looks like it's actually quiet today. There's a lot of older rings out here in the red color. So not a whole lot going on there across South America for now. The Atlantic Ocean, pretty quiet, nothing going on. All right, let's check out space weather activity, see if there's anything going on here on the sun. We got, looks like some low-grade M flare activity here in the last few hours, couple hours. Actually, the last 24 hours here showing some M flare activity with at least, there's 2, 3, 4, 5 M flares here. None of those, I believe, are Earth-directed. It's coming off of a sunspot that's more positioned here off on the western limb facing away from the Earth. But this area is still capable of producing some M flare movement, it looks like. Quite complex there, the magnetic structure. And aside from that, these little bitty sunspots here, really not too concerned with. Got another area up here, but this is still separated with that core. So really not a whole lot of elevated flare threats going on right now. Only a 10% chance for X flare, M flare at 55, C flare at 99% chance or so. So we'll be entering into a little bit of quiet period here. Just looking at these little weak sunspots, but back on the far side, this is a day old. So these sunspot regions here on the far side, this is the far side, Earth-facing side here. This is going to be the eastern limb. So these sunspots are coming around here to the eastern limb, and then they will be Earth-facing side here once they get center disk of the Earth-facing side of the sun. So there's a massive area out there at 3842, 3844 that will be interesting to look at once they get a little bit further out here on the eastern limb. It, like right now, it's probably center disk out there on the far side. Probably more position right about here. So we'll see them here within about a week, I feel, if they hold steady. Nothing major going on for severe weather. We do have some rain showers out here. Let me show you guys the weather here real quick in Northern California. It's kind of nice to wake up here and have some clouds and some cooler, rainier conditions out here just outside of Chico where I live. Rain showers coming in here in the last couple hours, and man, goodness, it's 60 degrees out. Beautiful morning, absolutely beautiful. Satellite view out here shows a fairly decent trough dipping in here to Northern California. A lot of cooler air behind this cold front. Going to bring some drier conditions here for tomorrow, though. We're supposed to have a very strong north wind out here, dry north wind, and that's going to create some elevated fire conditions. But fortunately here we have some rain prior to that event that's going to take place here tomorrow. They're talking about shutting off some power out here across the mountain regions to limit, any fires that start because of down power lines. But good thing we got a little bit of rain coming in before that event. That should help limit the fire potential starts out there. Let's go ahead and check out the numerical models here. Shows the weather patterns out here. Here's our low pressure system coming into the west coast area, bringing with it some rain and some cooler temperatures. That's going to interact over here across the southern plains here, it looks like, around this weekend and early next week. Chance of some severe weather across Oklahoma and Kansas, Nebraska area, northern Texas as well. Let me see if these guys are picking up on it yet. Well, day 3 here. Looks like there's going to be a marginal risk for some severe weather, mainly across the New Mexico area. So that's going to be valid for Friday and Saturday. But I think this is going to be a more significant severe weather event once this low pressure comes in here this coming weekend and early next week. After that, looks like we got another system out here across Northern California coming in for Sunday. That's going to be the next Sunday. As long as we get these little periods of cooler weather, I'm happy with that. I'm not into the hundreds anymore. That stuff is supposed to stay in July and August, but October, first part of October was pretty hot out here. We had a couple 100-degree hot days out here, so it's been a brutal summer altogether out here in California. Goodness. All right, so we'll watch things out here today, see what takes place. I mean, California right now is actually pretty quiet, as I mentioned here. There is some slip going on here across the creeping segment of the San Andreas Fault. And potentially that adjustment going on up here can back build the pressure here, make that plate adjustment further strain out here in this area. But not seeing any uptick yet. We'll definitely keep an eye there on the Southern California area. Seismograph stations out there look pretty quiet. Maybe a spike or two there on Mount St. Helens, but that could be due to some wind out there, or I'm not even for sure what they got going on. Maybe some rain or snow up there in that area of Washington. A little bit of rain up there, it looks like. Could be even some snow, who knows. All right, I'm out of here, folks. Have yourself a wonderful Wednesday. I'm going to go outside and sing along with the birds out there, maybe for a little bit at least. Have a good one. We'll catch you guys back out here a little bit later.